So we are back. Finally, we're back to finish up this mock draft video. Last video, I was supposed to do 1 through 15, but I only put 14 players in there. So today, we're going to do 15 from 30 and finish up this first round. I'm really excited to finish up this video and get into some other videos. So with that being said, let's get into this video. At number 15, I have the Orlando Magic taking Tyrese Maxey. Taking a risk on Maxey this high in the 2020 NBA draft means betting on the fact that his 29% three-point shooting as a freshman has more to do with adjusting to the college level than it doing with his actual shooting ability. Coming through high school, Maxey had the reputation for being a big-time scorer because of his ability to make deep jumpers off the bounce and because of the way that he can finish around the rim with a variety of floaters and layups. And while he would show flashes of being the dominant scorer Kentucky needed him to be, the Wildcats' late season surge was a direct result of Immanuel Quickley's improvement, not Maxey finding his consistency. We spent the entire season saying, just wait until Maxey finds his stroke, and he never really did. He needs to be able to make that shot because the rest of the game is somewhat limited. He's not a natural creator. He's wired to score more than anything else. He certainly isn't an elite athlete by NBA combo guard standards, although he is a pretty good on-ball defender. He's also a worker and by all accounts a great kid and a competitor. I think there's a real chance his ceiling is a second unit scorer, but if that all comes together, I can see him putting together a career on par with Lou Williams. Alright, now at number 16, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves taking Josh Green. Green is a consistent jumper away from being a guy that can stick in the league as a role player for a decade. He's really athletic, he's terrific in transition, and he's a willing defender that gives effort. He can be coached up on that end. He was definitely limited as a scorer in this past season, and a part of that is due to the fact that he shot just 33% on jumpers in the half-court offense this past season. You know, Josh Green is a really athletic kid, and I think he's really talented. I think he has a lot of potential, and I feel like if he can consistently shoot the basketball, he'll be really tough at the next level. He's a good passer, and as you just seen, I mean, that reverse dunk is not easy, and he made it look like it was easy. I think he's going to play really well in the NBA, and I'm really excited to see Josh Green. And at number 17, I have the Boston Celtics taking Patrick Williams. The numbers look fairly pedestrian, admittedly, but putting them in context is important. Williams was coming off the bench for a Florida State team that goes 11 deep and gives everyone pretty equal minutes. No one ever puts up huge numbers in Leonard Hamilton's program. What they do is incubate players that project as role players in the NBA. At 6'8", Williams is a terrific athlete and a great defender, and that can protect the rim and guard out on the perimeter when needed. And while the shooting stroke was somewhat inconsistent this past season, the potential was there, and he did shoot 84% from 3 last season. I really like Williams. He's a great defender, and he can also score. I could definitely see him going in between 17 and maybe 25. I think the Brooklyn Nets is definitely a team that I could see him falling to. And at number 18, I have the Dallas Mavericks taking RJ Hampton. Hampton is a kid that has quite a bit of potential, but he'll need time to develop at the next level. He's a 6'5" guard that can play on or off the ball, but needs to continue to develop his ball handling and his perimeter jumper to be able to do either at the next level. He has the length, quickness, and athleticism to be able to defend either backcourt spot in time, but he is something of a late bloomer that needs to put on some weight and strength. He'll try defensively, too, but he needs to be coached up. And again, that will come with time. The biggest concern I have with Hampton, who played this past season in Australia, is that I'm not sure if he has an elite skill set yet. But I really like Hampton, and I mean, being from Texas, this is going to be really big for him to play for his hometown team. And at number 19, I have the Milwaukee Bucks taking Jaden McDaniels. On the one hand, it is very easy to see why McDaniels is such an intriguing prospect. players with his size and length aren't supposed to be able to move and do the things that he does on the perimeter. He has an impressive handle, and he can knock down tough perimeter jumpers every once in a while. He'll definitely do something during a game that will make it to the House of Highlights or Bleacher Report. On the other hand, McDaniels is probably sitting at about 200 pounds or so, and that might be a problem because he hasn't handled contact all that well this season, and he is not that explosive either. And during Pac-12 play, all of his red flags came to the forefront. Emotional outbursts led to far too many technical fouls, and he led the Pac-12 in fouls and turnovers. He averaged just 11 points during conference play. He was benched for the last 10 games, and Washington definitely wasn't better without him on the floor. And in my opinion, I look at him as the lottery ticket in this NBA draft. His skill set is very similar to Kevin Durant, and I really like this kid a lot. I've liked him since he was in high school, and I think if he add a little bit more muscle and he continue to improve out on the perimeter and defensively and control his emotions, I think this kid will be something very special at the next level. And at number 20, I have the Brooklyn Nets taking Tyler Bey out of Colorado. Bey is one of the most underrated players in this draft class, and at 6'7", he's an exceptionally springy athlete that has proven himself to be an impact rebounder at the collegiate level throughout his career. He's proven himself to be a playmaker defensively, averaging more than a block and a steal per game as a redshirt junior. While hitting 42% of his threes this past season, the consistency of his jumpers may end up being what determines whether he sticks in the NBA for good. He profiles as a versatile forward at the next level in a draft where in the late first and early second, there aren't many of those available. And at number 21, I have the Denver Nuggets taking Tre Jones out of Duke. Jones is a really good passer, a terrific defender, and the kind of point guard that checks all the cliche boxes about being a winner. A leader and a facilitator. He was the ACC Player of the Year and the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. His box score numbers were impressive, and his impact on basketball games go well beyond the box score. But more importantly, his jump shot showed real tangible improvement. Jones made 36% of his threes and shot 4 of them per night. In catch and shoot situations, he made 40% of his jumpers and hit them at a 1.1 points per possession clip, or about 59%, which was in the 82nd percentile nationally. His pull-up game isn't there yet, but if he went from being a guy that teams flat out did not guard beyond 12 feet as a freshman to a 36% shooter as a sophomore, who's to say his pull-up game won't be next? If Jones never gets any better, if this is who he is for the rest of his basketball career, he's a backup point guard in the league until he doesn't want to play anymore. If he continues to develop his shot, however, he could end up being a starting point guard. I find it hard to believe this kid isn't going to keep getting better. In a draft like this, that's great value in the late run. And at number 22, I have the Philadelphia 76ers taking Jahmi'us Ramsey out of Texas Tech. I've gone through stages with Ramsey. I loved him in high school, and I was frustrated by him early on in his college career. As Texas Tech worked through figuring out what was best for him and what was the best way to use him, they settled on is a scorer and an elite shot maker. The big red flags for me is that I expected Ramsey to play the Jarrett Culver role for Texas Tech, but he's not that guy because he is not on their level at creating out of ball screens or as a passer. Since he is only 6'4", that's something to monitor in the long term. But he's a bouncy athlete that can play in transition, shoots the cover off the ball, and should be able to attack closeouts. The two major question marks are on the defensive end of the floor and shooting off of the dribble, but those are things that can be improved with time. He's not the player I thought he would be, but he's still good enough that using a top 25 pick on him makes a lot of sense. At number 23, I have the Miami Heat taking Xavier Tillman out of Michigan State. I may be out on a limb here, but I truly believe that Tillman is worth a first round pick, especially in this year's draft class. There's really two reasons for this. For starters, he's a terrific passer. No one in college basketball is better than making the right play in a 4-on-3 scenario when the defense traps a pick and roll ball handler than Tillman. But he is also an excellent defender that can really read the game. Talk to people around the Michigan State program and they'll tell you he ran everything defensively. It was his voice that teammates heard. Now, the major question marks is his size. At just 6'8", can he defend fives? Is he quick enough to play the floor? If we knew for a fact that the answer to both of those questions would be yes, and he can do it very well, I would have him slotted as a top 20 pick in this draft. At number 24, I have the Utah Jazz taking Kira Lewis out of Alabama. Lewis checks a lot of boxes. He's young for a sophomore. He enrolled at Alabama as a 17-year-old and won't turn 19 until April. And he put up huge numbers for Alabama team that is built to run. They are also built to shoot nothing but threes and layups. He also shot 37% from three for the second consecutive season. He's slender, he's turnover prone, and a part of the reason he produced as much as he did this season was because of the pace that Alabama played at. He's definitely worth a first round pick, especially considering his age. I think he definitely has some Ja Morant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type potential. At number 25, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder taking Theo Maledon. Maledon is a interesting prospect in a couple of different senses. On the one hand, he was 16 years old when he started getting senior minutes for a ASVEL club that make it back to the EuroLeague this year. He's trained with the French senior national team. He started 23 out of the 46 games that he played in, but his role throughout the season definitely lowered a little bit. His consistency waned, and he battled a shoulder injury throughout the season. But he's a 6'4" guard that can play on or off the ball and has shown the ability to play at a high level throughout his career. I really like this pick for Oklahoma City, considering the fact that Chris Paul may be traded next year and they may be looking to have a young guard come off the bench. At number 26, I have the Boston Celtics taking Isaiah Stewart out of Washington. What you see is what you get from Stewart. He's a tireless rebounder that at 250 pounds of solid muscle is ready to compete in the paint against NBA bigs right now. He's a good post scorer that has shown some glimpses of being able to make threes. The Washington staff will tell you he's lights out in practice. That's the good. The bad is that he is an undersized center at 6'9" that doesn't have the length or explosiveness to be able to protect the rim at the NBA level. And while he'll put in effort to guard on the perimeter, he has never really shown that ability. Playing in that Washington zone hasn't helped those concerns either. He's tough, he has a motor, he's really good at the things that he does well, but if he's not going to protect the rim or guard on the perimeter, where does he fit in the modern NBA? I also think Stewart is the kind of guy that will be hurt by the fact that there won't be any workouts, because he has an impressive interview that could show off his shooting and, at least in theory, prove what he can do defensively. And at number 27, I have the New York Knicks taking Jalen Smith out of Maryland. Smith was one of the best players in college basketball over the course of the last month. He's a pogo stick athletically, and that started to make threes on a consistent basis. I'm worried about his frame. He checks in about 225 pounds, but looks like he's closer to 200 pounds. And I'm not sure how much of a weapon he is offensively beyond being a spot-up shooter. Defensively, he could protect the rim, but will that translate to the NBA? Where every 5 he goes up against will have 20 pounds on him. And while he's a terrific athlete, he plays stiff and upright. I'm not sure how well he will use the athleticism without a runway for a takeoff. With all that being said, over the course of the last 8 weeks of the season, Smith's potential turned into production. It was the biggest reason Maryland looked like one of the best teams in the country down the stretch. I'm willing to bet on him at the back end of the first round. At number 28, I have the Toronto Raptors taking Daniel Oturu out of Minnesota. In a league where seemingly every team had a dominant interior player, Daniel Oturu has been arguably the best two-way defensive center in the Big Ten. The numbers that he put up speak for themselves. He was one of the most improved players in the country. He doesn't have the greatest feel for the game, and he's something of a black hole when he does get the ball in his hands. But he has shown off a bit of a three-point range and is actually able to put the ball on the floor and make things happen off the bounce. I think his fit as a 5 in the NBA is better than some of the bigs slotted in front of him. At number 29, I have the Los Angeles Lakers taking Cassius Winston. Winston did not have the season many of us expected him to have as a senior, understandably given the death of his brother in November, but he still put up All-American numbers for a team that won a share of the Big Ten regular season title. He was playing the best basketball down the stretch, and he still had the highest basketball IQ of anyone in the 2020 NBA draft. He's an elite passer and a shooter that thrives in ball screens. Yes, the defense and athleticism are concerns, but we said the same thing about numerous point guards that have made careers out of being backup point guards. Winston is the next in that pipeline. And with number 30, the last pick in the first round, I have the Boston Celtics taking Nico Mannion out of Arizona. I'm not sure whether or not Mannion would actually get drafted this high, but I'm willing to rank him this high because of what his floor is in the draft, where there are a number of prospects that could end up being total bust. To me, Mannion has the same kind of prospect profile as the likes of Jalen Brunson, Fred VanVleet, TJ McConnell, or Ryan Arcidiacono. He's a guy that at worst will spend a decade playing in the NBA as a backup point guard because of his basketball IQ, his ability to make shots, and the fact that he can operate in a pick and roll. My concern with drafting him this high is that he doesn't really have an NBA skill set. He's a good athlete, but not a great athlete, and this isn't helped by the fact that his wingspan is reportedly 6'2.5". He's not great at beating defenders off the dribble in the half court, which is a problem for an NBA point guard. He's a good shooter, but not a great shooter. He has high-level passing ability, but not Trae Young or Luka Doncic. He tries defensively, but he just don't have the physical tools to be a lockdown defender. I'm just not sure what he does that truly sets him apart. And the fact that he was the leader of an Arizona team that kept losing close games that they shouldn't have lost is very, very concerning. With that being said, we have finally made it to the end of the video. This was really fun to do. It took me a couple of days because I was uploading, NBA highlight videos, but I'm really happy that I was able to finish up this mock draft, and maybe I'll do another one. I don't really know, but I really had a lot of fun doing this. It took some time, so I would really appreciate it if you guys can like, subscribe, comment, share the video, and just enjoy the content that I'm putting out. Leave some suggestions down below if you would like, of next videos that you would like to see me post. For now, I'm going to continue doing my highlight videos. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.